Hello, this is AnlineOffline. Welcome back to another casual's quick guide to Call of Duty Mobile. For today's video, we'll be covering the CR-56 AMAX. Introduced in Season 5 of 2021, the AMAX is an assault rifle added from Modern Warfare 2019 and is based on the modern Galil Ace. Treyarch has used both the classic version with wooden furnishing and the ARM variant in its futuristic games. Compared to the AKs its hostile neighbors wielded, the FALs provided to Israel by NATO were unfit for desert conditions. They say if you can't beat them, join them. In this case, the Israelis beat them anyway, and decided to capture thousands of Egyptian AKs during the 6-day war. Yisrael Balashnikov, an Israeli inventor with ancestry in what is now Ukraine, took inspiration from the Finnish RK-62, which was based on the Polish variant of the AK-47. Chambered for 5.56, this east-west hybrid rifle competed against the likes of the American M16, Stoner 63, and West German HK-33. The domestic rifle won out, and not just because it was a bottle opener. But if Israel were to continue to receive aid from the West, it wouldn't be a good idea to name the rifle after someone who coincidentally rhymes with Kalashnikov. Luckily, Balashnikov already changed his surname to Galili, hence the Galil. However, because the Galil was modeled after the original AK with its milled receiver, it was heavier and more expensive than its stamped AKM contemporaries. The adoption of the Galil was delayed by the onset of the Yom Kippur War, and months prior, the US had pulled out of Vietnam with a surplus of M16s. So, both rifles were adopted by the IDF. And by 2000, the Galil was phased out in pursuit of the Tavor Bulba. But it hasn't been forgotten. Both South Africa and Colombia have licenses to produce their own modern variants, and the Galil Ace has been adopted as the standard issue rifle by the Chileans and Vietnamese. But back to Call of Duty's AMAX. Base damage per shot is moderate, killing in 4 shots at first, 5 at mid-range, and then severely dropping to 7 from afar, thus leaving you with an effective base range of 28 meters. The fire rate is moderate at 706 rounds per minute, and gives you an average time to kill except at long range. Fortunately, its body multipliers can make up for its lackluster range. The chest deals 30% extra damage, and it deals 10% extra to the biceps and stomach. With this, its 4-shot potential can be extended into its second range, but because the forearms deal base damage like the legs, they can be obstacles in head-on gunfights at longer ranges. Headshots deal a high 50% extra damage, and if you only land headshots, you could achieve a 3-shot kill, but I wouldn't count on it. Otherwise, just one can be helpful in its second and final range. In terms of mobility, the AMAX is below average for an assault rifle. Its ADS time is tied for the second slowest among its class, only slightly ahead of the ICR. Luckily, it does have a noticeably fast sprint out time that's on par with most pistols. The base mag size is the standard 30 and can be extended to a plentiful 50. Switching to M67 will reduce your mag size down to 20, but we'll get there soon. Reload cancelling is solid and it's essentially the same whether or not you have spare rounds. As for bloom, the AMAX is average overall, but its hipfire spread is subpar, and is what you'd expect from an average LMG instead of an AR. The iron sights are fine for its intended range. Recoil is quite light and easy to control. If you want something with more damage and range, then you can switch to M67, which converts the AMAX into a semi-auto with a fire rate cap of 307 rounds per minute. Base damage per shot is high, as it's a consistent 3-shot kill across the map, and is further amplified by its new body multipliers. Headshots deal over double damage. The chest and forearms deal 30% more, and the stomach deals 10% extra. This means in its first range, it's a 2-shot kill unless you only target the legs and biceps, and a 1-shot kill with just a headshot. In its second range, you can no longer 1-shot and have to be more precise to not hit the biceps. Assuming that you are accurate, you have infinite effective range, and the potential to achieve an SMG level time to kill. Although there are some caveats. Aside from the reduced ammo capacity and the difficulty of using semi-autos on a touchscreen, your radius time is much slower. And because it's still classified as an assault rifle, it still has bloom. Luckily, it's on par with the burst weapons. What you should be more worried about is its much more noticeable recoil, which can be more difficult without proper trigger discipline. And lastly, the AMAX recently received a signature attachment in the form of the GRD11, which acts as an underbarrel buckler shield. And it's not very useful. It has 50 HP before breaking, and has a very small hitbox. You'd have to go out of your way to hit it, and plenty of weapons have consistent time to kills to the legs. The only practical use that I can see out of it is if you combine it with the M67 rounds and camp on a head glitch or drop shot a lot. Even then, I don't think it's worth the attachment slot. When the AMAX was released 2 years ago, I would say it was an overrated weapon. It was average, low recoil but unimpressive bloom, and it had a harsh damage drop off. Looking back on it now, it was popular, not because of its mobile stats, but because of how much people used to love Warzone 1. M67 on the other hand, was underrated at first, but came to be recognized as a high tier but high skill weapon, because it was the only reliable semi-auto that could 2-tap to the forearms in head-on gunfights. A couple seasons later, the M67 was nerfed, while the SKS and ASVAL were buffed. But it did get easier access to the disable weapon skill, which was taken away in 2022 and given to the marksman rifles instead. 2022 did see the AMAX receive plenty of buffs to its bloom. Season 3, Season 5 along with a buff to its mobility and range, the latter helping out the M67, and towards the end of 2022. I don't blame much BR, but it did receive a damage buff there, which made it meta. I don't know if it still is. So where does this stand today? It's a fine weapon, but aside from its sprint out time, it's nothing special in multiplayer. Lots of other weapons can perform the role of a flexible weapon with the time to kill of the average human reaction time. The HVK, HBRA3, Peacekeeper, AK-47 and 545, Maddox, Olger, and Dingo. Now don't get me wrong, it is one of my all-time favorite weapons in this game, but that mostly applies to the M67 back in the day. Is it still viable? I believe so, but the SKS is preferred for its faster fire rate, ADS, and easier recoil. I would say it's pretty even with the DMR version of the ASVAL. One is hit scan, has more range, and much better flinch. The other has a better stomach multiplier, is faster overall, and no recoil. So in my opinion, the AMAX could use some buffs. First and foremost, unnerf the M67. It wasn't overpowered before, and it won't be if it came back. Number 2, better hipfire. Stat-wise, the AMAX should be a close to mid-range flexible weapon. It does have a good sprint out, but it doesn't have the hipfire spread to capitalize. I feel like it would have been better if they just took the shield from the shield turret and slapped it on instead of what we have now. The 50 HP, it's not bad, it's just small. And with that, I feel like you could introduce more casual counterplay to quickscoping, shotguns, and potentially melee weapons if you want to go that far. And lastly, if we never get the classic Treyarch version of the Galil/Grav, it would be a missed opportunity to not have those versions as Battle Pass blueprints. But hey, that's just my opinion. This has been a Casual's quick guide. Feel free to suggest what weapons you want to see covered next. My name is On, and I'm off.